I found myself in a very precarious situation when this whole work from home was, just sprung upon us. It just suddenly came as a bolt from the blue, to be really honest with you. And it's not just the ecosystem of your life that changed. It's the ecosystem of everybody that is attached to you. And as a consequence of that, all four of us were in the house at the same time. We suddenly had to adapt to a work from home, operating digitally. You couldn't really see each other face to face. You were put in a scenario where there was so many uncertainties around the business that were really being thrown upon you. Then you had children who were doing schooling from home. So yeah, it was very complex. I would be honest enough to say that I didn't really take to work from home as easily as maybe my colleagues did. And I really found it distracting because I felt like I was getting pulled into many directions. But I do believe that human resilience wins over all situations. And I think when you're placed in a situation, there's nothing you can do but just adapt to it. So it's been more than 100 days now. And like Raki said, a routine has set. We've set a pace for ourselves. And yeah, we've started adapting to it. And I would say now, to some extent, even enjoying the entire process. Would I like to go back to my routine? Most certainly. I would certainly like to go back to the way life was. But I'm equally cognizant of the fact that life's going to change post-COVID. So ready to bring it on, whatever life has to bring on. Answer this in two parts, actually. What did keep me awake at night? I sleep very well now, to be honest. But if you'd asked me a question in January where you would have said, where do you see yourself 5 years down the line? I would have had that answer packed down. And then March happened to us, and the entire axis of our life pretty much shifted. So what really kept me awake at night is the fact that I had no knowledge of where things were moving and the entire bubble of uncertainty that we were all operating within. And also you have huge responsibilities, right? You have professional responsibilities, you have personal responsibilities, and the reality is that every decision that you're making is going to have some kind of a ramification or some kind of an impact on the business, on your life, on your children. And the reality is you are operating or you are navigating in a scenario where you don't know whether your decisions are going to be right or wrong. But you're going to hypothecate, you're going to take everything from your experience and everything from your instinct and then take a decision, and then hopefully you're going to throw that ball in the air and you're going to hope that it lands up somewhere. So the uncertainty of whether those decisions that I was taking professionally, personally, the strategic roadmaps that we were creating, were they going to pan out to benefit the brand, to benefit my life? Yeah, that really kept me awake at night. Many nights, I would say. But I think peace has settled, to be honest. And like Raki said, mercifully, I sleep well now. So
what would you have to say other than your own brand, or if you want to speak about that?
I'm just gonna touch a little bit about my brand first, and then of course talk about some other inspirational work. I truly respect the work that most of my colleagues actually on this panel have done. The entire hospitality industry has come as one unified force, and irrespective of the fact that the industry took a significant beating, so to speak, as a consequence of this pandemic. I think just brands like Marriott, IHCL, Hyatt, everybody put themselves out there to just do a lot of communities outreach. And I think that in itself is such a huge platform to really showcase the fact that you're out there for people, you're out there for the community, you're out there for service. And service can take many connotations. It's not just about sampling a 5-star hotel. It's also being out there and helping the underprivileged and helping people who genuinely were in need. And I think a lot of brands like Marriott and Taj have done a significantly commendable job in this space. So yeah, hats off hats off to the hospitality industry, I would think. Just to wear a different hat, I think brands in different categories. For example, Emirates in the aviation sector, they did a brilliant job. Nike has done a brilliant job in getting out there with very fast moving, with the kind of agility that these brands can really be proud of, getting out there, putting awareness videos, putting out campaigns, absolutely entrenching their strategy in terms of customer engagement across social media networks. To me, that has been an exemplary showcasing of what brands can do to really connect and to really eyeball with their consumers in times of crisis. And I truly appreciate the fact that they are fast, they're moving. Clearly decision making within their organizations must be happening at a rapid pace, and I think they really managed to capture their audience at a fairly fast pace. And I think that's what's very admirable about some of the brands. And I really appreciate the work that they do in that space. I'll take that. Deepa. I think what the crisis has really taught us is recalibration. Uh, like Rajashri said, very rightly so. Great strategy also comes in the fact that you evaluate when you stay quiet, when is the right time to communicate. And sometimes it's not just about selling. Sometimes it's about showing empathy through all the communication construct that you do. Uh, Making sure that you make your consumer, making sure that you make the guest who has endorsed you heavily in your happier times, to tell them that we're thinking of them in their times of crisis. And so it's not just about pushing your brand in your face. I think it's also about evaluating when is the right time to communicate and what is the right message. So yeah, I think that's been a big learning. Sometimes you're very eager to get out there with everything that you have to really talk about, but in times like this, you need to exercise the right quotient of sensitivity in your communication, and I think that's been a very big learning. I think what has really transpired as a consequence of this is the advent of digital media. A lot of us operate between traditional and digital in our marketing mix, but clearly it's been lopsided, and so we've all had to don hats where we've had to have an overnight learning in this space and just reorient your execution strategy to making sure that you're completely engaging with your customer through the right marketing channels, through the right networks. What is the right strategy to communicate a marketing campaign across social media? All of this needs a reorientation of thought, because you've clearly had very well laid out plans that have been completely swept under the table, and you've now suddenly got to make new plans with a new strategy in a very short span of time. So I think the agility and the quickness with which you need to move in a time like this and make sure that you capture the timeliness is what crisis taught me professionally, for sure. Yeah, well, Raki's pretty much covered, most of what I was really going to touch upon. But I think we'll all have in a very big way. I think the hospitality landscape has always been predominantly traditional in the way we've really operated across all our touch points. But I think with this entire shift, it's been a paradigm shift. It's been a paradigm shift in the way we've approached so many things and so many facets across a hotel. I think what is really going to change is the fact that there's going to be an advent of technology in a very big way. And I think how fast we're going to absorb technology into our skeleton of the hotel or skeleton of the property is really going to be the defining factor, which will distinguish how you're going to be perceived, because that, according to me, is going to be the key as we move forward.
As will technology marketing strategies, because now people have got to delivery of that kind, so you have to raise the bar to the next level. So
because everything, sorry Deepa, everything's become contactless, right? The whole contactless process is going to bring about technology in a very, very big way. So which is where you've got to deliver to the promise. And I just want to add something to Rajashri. What Rajashri touched upon earlier is that if we really want to resuscitate travel and tourism in the country, I think all of us need to come as a unified force across each of our brands. I think each of our brands is doing spectacular work, to really bring that customer journey to life and to make sure that we are living up to the promise. But we'll all have to come together as a unified force to make sure that we're bringing things to the table which is going to resuscitate travel and bring confidence in it all over again. Of course, we're going to be we're going to be very cognizant of how the market really eventually develops and eventually unfolds after this entire pandemic is over. We're going to be keeping into consideration how travel is going to move, how travel is going to pan out. These are very early days. Currently, the country is still in a state of staggered lockdown, with some cities opening up, some cities. So, of course, we will evaluate. We will be very mindful of the market, and then accordingly devise an entire pricing and distribution strategy depending on the market vagaries and how the market has developed. So, of course, we will be taking very strategic decisions, and they will be taken for the benefit of the consumer for sure. What I'd like to really say to every budding communications professional who's feeling slightly confused or slightly deflated, I'm genuinely of the opinion that crisis often triggers permanent changes. I think it speeds up the course of history, economic, social, political, and cultural spheres, and they're all defined in times of difficulty. According to me, I think the role of a communication professional has emerged much stronger in these times than it was before the pandemic, before COVID really hit us. And I think we've got to take this opportunity and we've got to really run with it dramatically. I do believe the playbook is going to have different parameters in this new era. It's going to be about consistency and genuine engagement, keeping in mind what's your foremost strategy rather than being an afterthought. And so I do feel that as a communication professional or as an individual who wants to make a career in public relations, it's going to be all about responsible communications. You are really going to be the curator of the truth. And you have to make sure that you're establishing the right message for your stakeholders, for your brand, for your making sure that you're very aligned with your business strategies, and of course keeping in mind what the society's demands are going to be as we emerge from the crisis. So no, I genuinely don't believe that the role of a communications professional is going to be diminished or marginalized in any way. As a matter of fact, I think they're going to emerge much stronger in the marketing mix than it was earlier, because there's going to be heavy responsibility on how you're going to project your brand in the media today. Just to add to what Rajashri said, it's going to become a manifesto of all hospitality brands. I think it's the vision, it's the promise, and we're known to living up to the promise that we make in terms of sanitization, hygiene, and Rajashri rightfully said it was always existing. It's just now clinically, from aesthetically clean to clinically clean, so to speak. And just because we want to make sure that we live up to the safety promise. So really, I think the vaccine is going to have no bearing on, whether we're going to change these processes or these implemented operational mechanisms. I think they're going to be here to stay. The thing I'd like to just add to that is that the product has been shut down, the people haven't, right?
Yeah.
And social media is all about people. It's all about making sure that you're utilizing that abundance of talent that you have within your hotel, simply because there is disposition of time as well. And so we've done so much in terms of customer engagement on social media, like with our chefs, with our bartenders, with therapists. And I think if we really put together our heads and brainstorm, there's a lot we can do around a social media strategy that revolves intrinsically around customer engagement, utilizing the talent that you have. So I don't think the product being shut down is really a deterrent in any way. So, with the amount of community outreach that every brand has really gone ahead, and sometimes putting your own health and safety at risk is a very big indication of the fact that the industry is very committed in establishing a very honest connect with the guests and with the consumers. So I think we've established that as an industry. No other industry has really come forward to do so much for the community.